everybody, and welcome to this episode of Small Business Small Talk. I am your host, Christy Smallwood, and I am, as usual, super excited about this next episode. Couple housekeeping things first. If you have not followed us on your favorite podcasting app, station, channel, I was going to say station, but that definitely dates me. Sorry. So make sure you have subscribed, hit that little button to get notifications. And then that way you're up to date on all of our latest episodes, because this past month I've been a little inconsistent because I've been out of commission, but I'm starting to get back in the swing of things. So thank you very much for joining us today on this episode. Make sure also, if you have missed an episode by chance, or you would like to actually see it on video, go to smallbusinesssmalltalk.com. All of the things are there. That way you can have access to the particular podcasting channels that you might be interested in if you've not done it via audio, or you can even find us on the YouTube channel. You can find us just on the website. However you want to partake, the website's a great place to get started. Plus, there's additional show notes and links and things like that that we include across all of those channels for our guests and the topics that we cover. Now, Small Business Small Talk, if you have not joined us before, if you've not listened to this podcast, it is a show about small business, and I spotlight small business owners that are doing it. Like, they are out in the marketplace, living the dream, so to speak, and we get to learn their stories and they're the origin stories, I like to call them, and the backstory of how they get to where they are now, what they do and what they love about what they do, challenges that they've overcome. And then we also talk about, like, who has been their influencers and what kind of things have they learned? What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten? Like, how do we learn from each other? So it does a couple of things. One, you as a small business owner yourself probably are not alone out there. We all have challenges. We all have these things that we go through. And this show is built for that. I learn a lot from each of my guests, and I absolutely adore this kind of time with somebody to be able to go deeper and really learn from them. And it's just very insightful. In my business, what I do, it helps because then I can translate some of those challenges and the best practices that they may have in their business to help my own clients and my own business. So it's a win-win-win for everybody. And I do want to take a hot second here to thank, I've had a sponsor partner in this for over a year now, the Chamber of St. Matthews. We have a great partnership going on. And if you are not involved in your area chamber, you need to be. And find one. And typically, if you're in a bigger metropolis area, you're going to have more than one to choose from. I know in the Louisville area, we've got multiples. Look at a chamber that really, really hones in on building the relationship with small businesses. The larger businesses, there's a place for them as well. So that kind of falls under economic development, economic growth. You've got the large chambers who really want to focus on those large companies. But if you're a small business out there, you interview that chamber to find out what their culture is like, or how active are they. It's extremely viable for your business to be part of a chamber. It's built-in community, especially if they're active. So I always thank my sponsor partner because they have been just super fantastic for me. With that, okay. So my next guest, this episode, my guest is Shere with Tribal Knowledge Podcasting. Now, we're going to learn some about podcasting, but I got to learn more about Jeremy. So Jeremy has come from the chamber. We're in a group together. We got connected through somebody in the chamber, and it's just I know about his business, right? But then when I have these interviews with people and I get to learn about them and their backstories, and I had no idea this guy had a PhD. Like, wow. Now, for me, I do not have a PhD. I do have a bachelor's in marketing, yada, yada, whatever. And I've got some certifications here and there, but it's not a PhD. Like, a PhD is pretty intensive. I'm always impressed with those letters. Now, does it make me think of you? Like, I think anybody with a PhD in their background is like way smarter than me because they just put more effort, but that's not necessarily the case. And Jeremy points that out. So I appreciated that about him too. Some things that you'll learn in this is that, listening to Jeremy and how he started the business and how it's evolved over time, and, getting it to where he's still on the grow, like he's still in that stage of growth for his business and what he's learning from that. And I love those kinds of conversations because it just excites me that business is working, and how is it working for him, and who's he learning from, and how's he learning, and how's he applying the things he learned. And I also love that the thing I love about Jeremy too is because of his background, he is pretty articulate. I mean, it was a great conversation that is leveling up my own English a little bit. Like, I don't have to say ain't so much, but I probably will because that's just my way. So I like to make it fairly entertaining for people. But Jeremy's background includes, he has the PhD in English and writing. So his background includes a lot of writing, but it includes radio as well, and audio, like creating the audio portions, not necessarily, well, yeah, some radio's in there. Started with audio recording into radio into. So this evolution of his business. And so I'm not giving away all the secrets here, but just some things that I've enjoyed about this particular episode and Jeremy himself. And in full disclosure, Jeremy and I have partnered up on some things. And so I've used his services for a client that is put their own podcast out in the world. So I love working with Jeremy and his team, and it's just been delightful to have this conversation. And I hope you get that out of it as well. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Jeremy Shere with Tribal Knowledge. I am so happy you said yes to do this session with me, this episode for Small Business Small Talk, Jeremy. So Tribal Knowledge, and I know that you're actually getting ready to rebrand. So your business right now is all wrapped around podcasting, but I want to know like your background, your backstory, like where did you start and how did you even get to this point? So what's your backstory?
Okay. So, well, I'm trained as a writer primarily, and I always wanted to be a writer from when I was a little kid. And I ended up going to graduate school to go down the academic route because I thought, well, that's a life where you do writing and reading. And so I got a PhD in English literature at Indiana University. And along the way, to make a little extra money, because, if you're a graduate student, you're essentially taking a vow of poverty during that time. Like
right.
You make very little money, you get paid a little bit for teaching. And so just on the side, I mean, before that, I'd done some freelance writing. And so I thought, well, I'll do some of that just to make a little extra money. And one of the first gigs I got was writing for a radio show called A Moment of Science, which was produced in Bloomington, Indiana, which is where I was for graduate school and where I still live. And it was so I was writing these radio scripts about science topics. It was fun, got paid decently for it. And so that was my first experience with writing for an audio medium. And that led to some other opportunities for kind of similar radio programs on different stations. And I started writing for one called Sound Medicine, which is no longer on the air. It was produced up in Indianapolis, a public radio program. And they gave me opportunities to not just write for them, but also to produce audio and to be on the air, to be part of the show as like a, on-air personality. It was all recorded, not live. So I started producing my own radio segments. And I'm a bit of a musician, amateur musician, just for fun, but I built a recording studio at home, nothing fancy, but I repurposed it to record audio and produce these radio segments. So the stuff I was producing, we didn't call them podcasts, but that's essentially sort of what they were, very similar format. And this was before podcasting became the big deal that it is today. It existed, but it was very much a niche thing.
Right.
And then podcasting blew up. I guess it's been about 7-8 years ago now when Serial came out. the true crime podcast.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
suddenly everybody was listening to that. And podcasts, whoa, people started getting really into them. And Apple came out with a podcast app and a directory, and it just grew from there. And I didn't leap into it right away. I was still a graduate student, still doing radio stuff, but I was a fan of podcasts. And then one thing, after I got my degree, for about a solid decade, I worked as a freelance writer full time, still doing some of the radio stuff, but mainly writing. That was really my jam. And but then one thing led to the next, and I eventually ended up taking a job as a copywriter at Cook Medical, a large medical device company based here in Bloomington.
Okay.
And this was the first time in my life, and at this time I was in my 40s already. I'm 50 now. I was like 45, I guess. And this is the first time in my life ever that I just had like an office job. I'd been a freelancer and before that a graduate student. So this was
Oh,
totally
this was
new
your
to me.
first like real big corporate
Yeah,
experience.
exactly. First entree into like corporate America, show up at the big building, here's your cubicle, that kind of thing.
Now go
I was
right.
like, okay, well, I didn't know what to expect, but at first I was like, okay, went into it with an open mind. Let's see how it goes. And one thing that was really cool, or at least that I thought would be really cool, is that internally at Cook, they were talking about doing some podcasting as an internal communication channel, specifically for the sales reps. They have sales reps all over the world who spent a lot of time, and still to this day, a lot of time in the car driving around their
Yep.
territories from account to account, hospitals mostly. And it can be very isolating. So they have a lot of time behind the wheel. And so the reps themselves started talking about it. We should have a podcast that features each other so we can learn from each other about how we sell, how we do this job. And I thought, wow, that had never occurred to me because I didn't know anything about a corporation or sales teams or anything. And I'm like, wow, that makes total sense. And I'm like, I can do that. I know how to produce audio. I can be the producer of this internal podcast. So I really thought like, this is great. That I'll make my mark at this company and that's what I'll do and kind of build that up. And that'll be my career. Long story short, it never really happened. The company just never quite got behind that initiative. But I was so convinced that it was a good idea that I thought, well, okay, I bet other companies will see the value here. So just on the side, on my own time, I just started researching it, reaching out on LinkedIn and other channels, making some connections, talking to people, and little by little started to get some work here and there, just as a freelancer, just on the side, working with people to start producing podcasts for companies. And over time, I was at Cook for 5 years, and this side thing just kind of started growing a little bit to the point where I was starting to make more money from that than I was at Cook. And I thought, okay, am I going to do this for real or not? Is this just kind of a side gig or is it something I really want to do?
Sure.
And I decided at a certain point, this was about 2 years ago, yeah, I do want to do this. Corporate life was not for me. One thing I learned. I
Which
wanted
is
to get
also the
back to,
theme of this podcast.
yeah, I mean, that's one thing I learned and it's a valuable thing to learn, right? You really don't know until you try. So I'm glad I had that experience. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about how companies work, like a big company from the inside. Um, and it gave me the idea of podcasting as a business tool,
Mm-hmm.
not just as an entertainment thing, but something businesses could use. And initially, I thought for internal communication. The more I looked into it, so companies are using this for marketing too.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yep.
So I left Cook and I started out on my own, called my company Tribal Knowledge Podcasting. Although, as you mentioned, I am changing that, and we can talk about that a bit if you want. And that was 2 years ago. And so for the past 2 years, that's what I've been doing and just sort of building up this company little by little. And that's the story. That's how I got to what I'm doing today.
I love it. And I love that. And so you became one of these people who, because so far in my interviews, it's a rare person who is able to do both at once, because
Mm,
usually some catalyst has happened and they have to decide what to do, right? So it's been a
yeah.
one thing or the other, but you've been able to do it like every wise person would want to build one stronger than the other so that you could leave. So you had some stability there to be able to step out into the thing that's growing. Like you're following the energy of that business, which is
Yeah.
really a preferred way to go about it. Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
right. But it also, you following that energy all along the way from the PhD in writing, which I didn't know. So that's like a new little thing I learned about you. I was like, oh,
Mm,
I didn't know he was like super, super smart. PhD
mm,
people, like I'm so not that smart. Um, but following that thread all the way through has made total sense. Like hearing your story, it makes total sense that now you're doing this. You've pulled everything
mhm,
that you've been doing in the past and created this business that is not only viable but it's working. Like you have a
mhm.
team member and you're right, you're growing, you're still
Yeah,
growing.
yeah, yes.
And I love that. So what has been something like what do you love most about what you do?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I just want to say very quickly, having a PhD does not make you smart. In fact, if I could go back in time and tell it to my younger self who was thinking, should I go to graduate school for a PhD? I'd say, no, you idiot, don't do that. Do not do that. It takes, I got a, in the humanities, I got a PhD in
Yeah.
English. It took me 8 years to do that with no job at the end of it waiting for you. And the academic job market is notoriously horrible. And which is one reason I ended up not going down that route. And there were other reasons too. But and I met a lot of I definitely met a lot of smart people in my program, who had PhDs or whatever. But I've also met a lot of dumb people who have PhDs. So just want to get that. I sort of feel strongly about this. Just wanted to get it out there. Having a PhD has nothing to do with how intelligent you are. It really doesn't. Anyway, so your question was, what do I like? What do I like
Yeah, what do you
about what
love
I'm
most
doing?
about what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I think probably the number one thing, and this is just true no matter what else is going on. And I imagine this is true for anyone who kind of like any entrepreneur who decides, okay, I'm gonna just do something on my own, is that I'm in charge of it. I'm not beholden to anyone else except for my customers, of course.
Right.
But I'm, as unlike working at a big company where you're just a cog in the machine, and there's
Hmm.
a lot to say for that, right? There are things about that I did like, the steadiness of it, the security of it, the benefits, all that, right? Not everything was on me, but I guess I like everything being on me for some reason. I like being in control. And it's more you're in control of your time, right? That was the worst thing about working at a big company. Just you had to, your time was not really your own. And you only have so much time off, and you had to sort of beg and borrow and can I please have this day off? And it's not that I need so much time to because I want to do so many other things. In fact, I work a lot harder now over the past 2 years than I did when I just had an office job. I mean, I'm working
Ain't that the
much
truth?
I'm working much longer hours, more intensely. Um, but and this is another common, almost cliched thing. It doesn't feel like work exactly. It's a different kind. I mean, not that it's always fun. In fact, a lot of it is just the daily grind of doing all the administrative stuff to keep the business going. A
Hmm.
lot of emailing. Like, no one would call that fun,
No, I,
but
I I was just telling I think I was griping to my mom the other day because she handles my bookkeeping. So she
mhm,
reconciles the books at the end of the month. And I was telling her, I'm like, I spend over half of my time just doing the work to get the business done. And
yeah,
that's not even client work. Like I have a team that's doing my client work now to make sure, and I
yeah,
review them, I set them on their pace. So there's team time, but then there are all these like, quit asking me this tax question. I don't know the answer to that. Or I got to go do the budgets and now I've got to do the filing and now I've got to do,
yeah,
this, like all of these different things that require that a business requires, just
Yep.
in general, don't care what kind of business you have, all of those things still have to get done. And I'm over here like, this is why we hustle, because I want that off my plate faster so I can get to the things that
Right.
I enjoy in the
Right.
business.
Yeah. No, exactly. There's so many things that you need to do just to keep the business going that are not particularly creative or joyous or anything like that, but they need to get done. And again, you do them, or I do them because no one else is going to do them. And again, it's on me. And I don't know exactly why. I think it's just how my brain works or something, or just my disposition. Like put me in a company with a, like a big company where I'm just sort of given tasks. And I'll be fully honest, like I'm a mediocre employee in that situation. Like I just find it almost impossible, at least in my one experience, found it almost impossible to really care enough to be like, yes, let's, just because it was all, um, the motivation just wasn't there, or and I wouldn't slack. Like I'd always do my work and get it done. But there wasn't that same sense of like, I'm pursuing a goal
Right.
and will I accomplish it or not? There's like some drama there. And running a business, it's all goal oriented, right? Whatever your goals are. And you can see the progress day by day and track it. And again, not that it's all good, not that it's always fun. In fact, a lot of times it's a grind, and a lot of it is there's a lot of stress involved too, especially the whole first year was like, and this was COVID too. So I'm like, what's going on?
Oh, yeah.
And just like I'm not growing the way that I want. What am I I'm not getting as many clients as I want. Um, and it's just me. I don't have a partner or anything. So I'm in, alone most of the time in my studio, even though I had some people helping me, but still they were just helping. They weren't like running the business alongside
Mhm.
me. And I'm a novice at this. I'm not like a trained business person. I don't have a long history of running businesses. So I'm learning on the go. And so a lot of that is really nerve wracking. And I'm like, I don't know what I don't know. Am I doing the right things? Maybe not, because I don't think things are going really the way that I want them to. And again, this is more like the first year, like last year.
Yeah.
And
Well, there's,
so,
and let me jump in because there's a
yeah.
book out there called The Brass Tacks Entrepreneur. It's an
Hmm.
older book from like 80s. And
Mm.
it is a business owner who wrote it. And he's like, there's a phrase in there that I took away. It's been one of my go-tos. The best mentors are trial and error.
Yes. Right. Trial and error. And hopefully, I mean, at least with me, um, it got to the point where I'm like, okay, I don't know what I don't know. I'm not totally failing. Like I do have a
Mhm.
business that's bringing in some money, but there's got to be a better way. Or like, so I started working with a business coach,
Yeah.
and that has made a big difference.
I love
Shout
the
out to
answer.
my,
I love that answer. Thank you so much.
yeah. I mean, anyway, I mean, I'm sort of straying from what you asked. Like, what do I actually like about it? So just to recap, like my time is my own. I really value that a lot. I like, much to my surprise, I find that I have come to really like the challenge of doing sales and marketing. I never
What?
thought that I never ever thought like that would be me, like sales, marketing. No, I'm a creative person. I don't, that's not
Welcome
me.
to the
But
creativity of sales and
right,
marketing.
of
Yeah.
course, right?
Yeah.
Anything, to really succeed in anything, you need to have creativity and whatever the task is and be a critical thinker. Sales and marketing is no different. And, but then it really is a thrill, especially when you're still very small and landing a new client, right? Like all the
Yeah.
work that goes into it. And when it happens, you're like, that's pretty cool. And I did that. I made that happen. Um, I like that. It's just this sense of all the work that goes into it. And for a long time, it seems like nothing's happening. And then it pays off. That's some satisfaction. And so I like that part of it quite a bit.
So you've mentioned, being part of the grind and some obstacles in there. What has been one of your biggest challenges? that you
Um,
that you've dealt with, overcome, all that kind of, happy stuff.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so as I already mentioned, one of the biggest challenges was just being a novice at this. And by that, I mean, not at podcasting. That I'm good with. I can produce podcasts all day long. It's running a business. And my business just happens to be podcasting, but it could, I'm talking about the business stuff whatever your business is, marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm a one-man sales and marketing team for right now. Hopefully, eventually, maybe I'll hire other people to do that. But right now, it's me. And so that has been a huge challenge and continues to be just figuring out how to do that, especially given that it's all online, right? My business is totally remote and all my marketing and
Mm-hmm.
sales efforts are online, remote. There's so many options, just social media, so many online platforms you can end up spending a lot of money on. Just how do you get clients? On the one hand, it's easier than ever to reach out and try to contact whoever you want anywhere in the world. But on the other hand, because it's so easy to do that, there's so much more noise out there,
Uh-huh.
as I've learned. And I just had never even really thought about it. How do you cut through the noise and actually get to talk to someone you want to get to know and somehow, some way, eventually get them to work with you? Say, yes, I'm going to give you some of my hard-earned money and let's work together. I mean, at first that was just a total mystery. And I've gotten better at it, but still learning new things every day. So that's been and continues to be a massive challenge, but in kind of a good way. It's cool to learn how to do it. And not that I've mastered it or anything. I don't know that anyone ever actually masters it. But when you do see it start to succeed a little bit, that's pretty cool. So that's been one big challenge.
Now I've been in marketing and advertising media for 30 years now. And there's always something new to learn. The basics all stay the same.
Yeah.
You're trying to communicate with people and talk them into persuade them. So it as a strategist, a strategic guide for people and business, marketing being my, specialty background,
Yeah.
I would say you're on the right track as far as a business to offer as a marketing service, because podcasting is a great way to get the word out about what you do. One of the things I love about podcasting in general, and I've said this to a couple of people on interviews, is that I, as a business owner myself, I need them to like me, trust me, and feel like I'm credible
Mm-hmm.
enough that they want to do business with me. And there's only two ways to get that point across quickly. And that's video and podcasting /
Mm-hmm.
radio / whatever.
Yeah.
So, because if they can hear my voice, they're now hearing more of the communication that I have to give. So, our communicate, the pie of communication, only 7% of that are the words that we use. So the
Mm-hmm.
text, right, the copy that we put on a post or something, it only counts for 7% of the overall communication. The tone of my voice is 30 something, and then the rest of it is body language. Like, you don't,
Mm-hmm.
these eyes tell their own kind of story all by themselves. So, and if you're only listening to us on the audio version, you need to go check the video out for me to. But seriously, the podcasting thing, being in that business, you're serving a purpose for just communication in general, communication internally for companies that are big enough that want that internal communication, but then externally for businesses who
Mm-hmm.
need external communication in the marketplace to potential new customers, or
Yep.
for those influencers that need an audience, in case they're an author
Mm-hmm.
of a book or something. And now that's shameless pointing to my own book out there. Uh, and I love again, that your background set you up for success in this, because you know writing and language, English, right? Communication has been that theme of your background. Then you add the technical aspect of putting the audio portion together in a shareable format. This meaning podcasting, right? And I also, you were talking earlier, so it makes me think of what was it back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, the old time radio shows.
Oh yeah.
Podcasting is not really the most brand new concept out there. It just has a specific word to it. We're just having these conversations, but this concept is not new at all.
Right. Well, I mean, it is and it isn't, right? So on the one hand, of course, radio goes back a long way.
Ways.
And sure, back before television, people would listen to the radio and gather around. You see the old, pictures of people doing that. The difference, of course, is that it was limited to like professional broadcasting for the most part, right? So, and you would just like TV tune into whatever was on the radio at a given time. Podcasting is different in that the barrier to entry is super low. So anyone who wants to can start a podcast for any reason. It's harder to keep a podcast going at a high level, but anyone can start one. And which means that the range of topics, there's a podcast for everything you can possibly imagine, right? Dozens of podcasts on pretty much every conceivable topic.
Yes.
So there's just so much variety, and it's a conversational medium. I mean, there are all kinds of different podcasts. Some which are very much in the style of that sort of old time radio or just like storytelling, which is great. I love those podcasts. But I think by far probably the most common genre is the interview style, the conversation, just like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And that's what I've come to realize, that it's the conversational part of it that's so valuable. It's a medium that encourages you, enables you to have meaningful conversations with people and get to know them that way. And then you publish that content, and it can be, and if it's done well, if the host is good like you, and if you have a guest who's okay like me, then you can create some really engaging content, and you can scale it pretty easily. Because I mean, how much prep did we do for this podcast? I didn't do any prep.
No, and that's my bad. I should have told her. I still need to send you, like, I need your info, like I need your picture. Otherwise, I'd go pick your picture for the promo.
Right. But I mean, my point is
the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, all you needed to tell me is, hey, you want to be on my podcast? It's a podcast about business, and just I'll ask you some questions about your business. Okay, there's no, that's it. It's not like I had to prepare for days or weeks, or like I'm giving some big presentation. We're just having a conversation, and it's the most natural thing to do.
Yeah, I did not give you a list of prep questions.
No,
there wasn't
no need in this instance, right? No. There's just no need. So, but that's that's where I see a lot of the value in podcasting for businesses, whether you're doing it internally or externally, like for your employees or for an external audience, that you can feature unscripted conversations. And I think in the corporate world, especially, it's a little hard to do that, because things are usually really well planned, right? Especially in marketing, like you're planning everything out very carefully, and your messaging is calibrated just so, for good reason, right? That needs to happen. But podcasting is a medium where you can be more informal, more conversational, have a little bit more that's left up to chance. And I think that's a good thing, because when done well, you end up creating content that can come across as more authentic, more real, more more interesting, because it's not so buttoned down and all scripted out.
Yeah. And then more people want to be a part of it, either in the listening audience, or somebody's like, I have a business, I'd love to chat with her on that podcast. So or anything. Like, we have a Brendan Fraser. I don't know why this is coming up. I'm a Brendan Fraser fan group on Facebook.
Really?
I'm sure if somebody, oh my gosh. Okay. The Mummy movie just totally changed my trajectory on the type of guy I wanted in my life, and it's never happened. So I'm still a Brendan Fraser fan, though.
Wait, back up. What do you mean the kind of guy you wanted in your life? Like you
I
saw the
want
mummy and you're like, that's what I need.
that appeals to me. Can I have one of those? That's been on my list for a while. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you talking about Brandon Fraser or the mummy?
Oh no, not the well, I don't know. He was pretty
Yeah, he's
whew,
pretty cool.
yeah, that was
Once he gets his skin on him and like the
the
body, he's
skin
kind of a cool
on,
looking guy.
preferably the skin on,
Skin
right?
on,
Skin
right? Yeah.
on version. Yeah, but that movie actually like set the bar for the kind of guy I would be willing to have in my life.
Really
Yeah, nobody's hit
interesting.
it yet. So that's why I still don't date.
Hmm. Okay. Well, hey, you know what? Brendan Fraser, great. He had his moment as a pretty awesome movie star.
Well, and he's coming back. So I know we're a little off tangent,
Hmm.
but
A little bit.
here's a little bit. But he is coming back. Like he is in Doom Patrol now, which is this quirky superhero type show. It is weird and quirky and hilarious. And he plays a total opposite kind of character, kind of guy.
Hmm.
He's he's actually well versed as an actor. Like he's very
Oh
good.
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Um it was just the Mummy movie was like impactful to me. But he's got he the news actually came out. He is going to be in the upcoming Batgirl movie as the villain.
Ooh,
I
okay.
know. So
Wow.
again, he's still a little top of mind, my superhero genre stuff. That's how we got off
Right. Okay.
tangent here. But having
Okay.
that group, so if somebody in that group said, I want to do a podcast solely around Brendan Fraser, I would want to be on that podcast
Sure you would.
because
Of
we're
course you
talking
would.
about this conversation and we somebody could just go ahead and start it. Whoever's listening and wants to do that, start that.
You know what? I think that would be a good, if you want, here's an idea for you. If you want to get to know Brendan Fraser, you start a podcast all about Brendan Fraser. He has to come on it at some point. If
At
he
some
ever
point.
hears, like, wait, someone started a podcast about me and my career, he'll definitely come on it and you can get to know him.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, the first question is, do I have time for that? So I'm
Of
gonna
course you do. You
look at
got
my
to
calendar.
prioritize, Christy. You got to prioritize.
Time management. Okay, so this is kind of the time of the interview here. Well, I'll ask you some more consistent questions that I ask my guests,
Okay.
such as um, what is the best piece of advice you ever received?
Mm, that's a good question. Can I answer it in just like the best thing I think that I've learned? I don't know if I received this from another person or what, but like something that I think is wise that somehow I absorbed. Is
Yes,
that
share
legitimate?
it
Okay.
however you want. Yeah.
Um, I think the one thing that has really benefited me most is a, a willingness to try things at least once, to take be willing to take some risks and try things just to see how they go. Whether that's starting a company, even though you might fail, or going to do a PhD, even if later on you look back and you're like, what the hell was I thinking? But like I was saying before, like it's the
Yeah.
dumbest thing I've ever done. But really, if I'm being totally honest, I mean, it at the time that's what I wanted to do, and it's the kind of like you often don't know if you're good at something or if you're going to like it until you try it,
Until you
and
try it.
so
Yep.
and then you learn a lot about yourself and your strengths and your weaknesses, and even when things don't work out and you quote unquote fail, that can be hugely valuable. And this isn't some great revelation. Like everyone knows this, especially like the ethos of Silicon Valley, right? Like fail fast and often. And and I think that's really true, and that means that you have to be willing to try things. You never want to fail. You hope it succeeds, but when it does, just pick up and go again and learn and move on. So I think that's a bit of wisdom that one way or the other I've come to absorb, and I think it really helps. It makes doing things possible where otherwise you might just be too fearful of failing or being embarrassed, and so you just never try.
Yeah. Okay. And so, final question. What does success look like for you?
Mm.
Jeremy Shere.
Well, that's also a very good question. And one that I feel like more and more I should have a much clearer answer for. Um, and in fact, I think that's an important thing when you're running a business to be able to look out, over the next 5 years or whatever, and say, what are my goals? Like, where do I want to be? Right. Because that's kind of what that question is about. Like, what are you aiming at? When can you look at yourself and say, I'm a success? Um, I guess I'll answer it in a few different ways. One, I guess I can look at myself right now and say, running my own business, my time is my own. Um, so business wise, I think that's some kind of success.
Yeah.
Um, so in business, I feel like, okay, I'm 50 years old. It's taken me like 50 years, although let's chop off the first 10 years at least, like,
Sure.
cut myself a little slack, but like it took me that long, I feel, to really find the thing that I wanted to do after trying lots of different things. So I found like, finally I succeeded in finding a thing and a business that makes sense for me, and that I'm doing it, and a long way to go, but that's a success, and I hope to keep growing it. Business wise, I guess that feels sort of like success to me, the beginning of it, not the end. In life generally, um, I can say I'm, happily married to a wonderful woman. That's that's a success, that, and with a lot of luck thrown in there, that my wife agreed to marry me, and which was definitely the best thing that's ever happened, or like the best decision I ever made, although it was really more her decision than mine. And I have two kids who, identical twin boys, who are in their 20 now, and
Oh,
out of the house. So getting them out of the house was a success. I'll
there you
count that
go.
as a success, getting my house back. But just having a family, and raising a family, and raising two boys that identical twins are tough, and being a parent is just really different. It makes running a business seem like nothing. Like parenting is just such a mystery and so difficult, but they're alive, not in jail, doing pretty well. I can look at them and say, okay, they're good people, good human beings. That feels like success too.
That should. Congratulations, Dad. You got him this far.
Yeah.
And I will say the twin thing, my mom is a twin. So I
Oh, really?
I grew up in that environment. Yes, I
Is she an
understand.
identical twin?
Oh yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh
Interesting.
yeah.
Is she very close with her twin?
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
They're weird.
So what was
They
that like for you?
um well, here's a funny story. So back in the day, we all lived in a little small town, and we went to Pizza Hut one day, and
Hmm.
it was our aunt came up from Tennessee, their aunt, my great aunt. And so we all went out to lunch. Now, there was a little guy who was cleaning the floors and doing the things. He saw me and my aunt and my other aunt go into the restroom. He saw because my mom was already in there. And so he
Hmm.
saw my mom come out, um, and he waved. It was all good. And
Right.
I came out, and then my aunt came out, and he had never paid attention that my mom was already in there.
Right. Right.
So here she
He's
came out.
like, what?
That's exactly what he did. And I said, "You just been working too hard. You might need a break."
You're hallucinating.
You're hallucinating. They would do that I heard stories from the high school days when they were together, and they would
Hmm.
fake the teachers or the boys out.
That's awesome.
Uh-huh. Until you go to the same school and you get to hear those stories from the teachers.
Nice. Nice. That's awesome. Well, listen, if you're an identical twin, I would think it's like a superpower almost. Like you gotta
You got
use
to do
it.
something with it. They are weird.
Yeah.
There's been a one Christmas specifically, they got each other the exact same Christmas present without talking to each other.
Right.
There's
Okay.
a lot of those weird things that will happen over time for
Hmm.
them, you
Hmm.
know. My aunt tends to know if my mom's not feeling good.
Right.
Just
Yep.
they live a state away from each other. So
You hear those stories, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
I mean, my kids haven't I haven't exactly seen something like uncanny like that, but it is a very interesting relationship. I mean, I have a brother who's 3 years younger than me. People often think we're twins because we look a lot alike. And but you know, but we're not, we're close. We're very close, really good friends. Um, but that's different than my boys, like identical twins. I mean, it's almost like they're the same person in two bodies, kind of. I mean,
It's
like they're different in some ways, but they do everything together. They share clothes, like they have the same group of friends. It's, like the bond is, it's different than just
strong.
siblings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is definitely a different thing. And one of the things that I've found, and I don't know if you'll see this with your boys or not, and I've talked to, so a friend of mine, her husband is also an identical twin. So
Hmm.
she brought this to my awareness, um, because I'm an only child. My
Hmm.
aunt, my mom's twin, also only had one child. So he and I grew up very differently than those two did. And
Hmm.
so I realize now my mom will not go off by herself more than a couple of hours at a time.
Mm,
And really, she still takes the dog with her. So she's never had like alone time.
interesting. Hmm. And
And
that's
so
because she's a twin and she's
she's
like,
a twin.
yeah,
She's
yeah.
never ever had to be alone. She's literally from the womb
Right.
shared space with somebody. And so, and I'm in my 40s and I'm just now coming to this awareness like,
Oh, that's interesting.
oh, okay, got it. Because I
Right.
do things by myself all the time as the only
Hmm.
child.
Right.
It's not even a thought to my head. So
Yeah. Oh,
interesting,
interesting.
interesting dynamics. I know.
Indeed.
And so the other thing that's also interesting, because we'll wrap this up here,
Yeah.
is that your version of success did not, just like everybody else I've ever interviewed so far, not one time has somebody mentioned a dollar figure.
Yeah.
Nobody's mentioned I
Right.
want to hit like this much money equals success to me. Not one time. And that is the other thing. The beauty about small business is that there's meaning in what we do and what our lives are and how we show up. It
Hmm.
just looks and feels different. And our version of success isn't the same as a corporation.
Yes. Right. I mean, that's a good point. And um, of course, money matters. And if your goal is to grow your business, then that's part of it, right? That's part of how you measure how well you're doing and how much you're growing. But I think in a way it can't be the main motivator for a few reasons. Like one, you can never have enough, really. It's
Right.
not like you can ever say, well, I've made this much money and now I'm complete. It's just, and also money is like such a fungible, sort of almost theoretical thing, especially when it's all just numbers on a screen, right? It's not like you have stacks of cash in your office or something. Like
Not
you don't
Scrooge
see it
McDuck
yet.
with the money bin to jump in.
Right. And that's good, right? Like it's sort of this, like, I mean, money itself is literally like a thing that human beings invented, at least the kind of money, like the way that we think about it. And I think it can't be the main motivator. It's more like it's the result of all the work. Like it's the thing that happens, but it's the getting there. It's like the journey. It's everything that goes into it that gives it meaning, because at the end of the day, it's like the money's coming in, it's going out, you're investing in the business. It's, again, you need it to live. And hopefully you're not spending more than you make, at least,
But
then
it's
you can
only
get
the
into trouble.
tool. It's only the
Yes.
tool that
Right.
gives you the benefits of what you're really emotionally tapping into.
It's just a means to an end. Right.
Hmm.
That's right. That's right. It's the things that have, I think, that have the real value are, again, like the time. Right now, that is something that is truly meaningful, because that's the finite resource. I mean, you only have so much. And so you cannot put a price really on having control of your own time. It's like, that's so valuable. And like I have let's see, how do I describe this? My brother's wife's brother.
Sure.
So I'm not, so he's an entrepreneur at a whole different level. He's a tech uh, entrepreneur, and he has a company that's worth billions of dollars. He's something of a genius. And I remember talking to him one time, and he said something that I'd read when reading about other entrepreneurs, even like super big deals like Steve Jobs, Zuckerberg, all those guys. Said their motivation was never money exactly. It was building something cool. It was creating something.
Mm-hmm.
It's the money came from that, and it's not, and like they like it. It's great to have a lot of money. You can do a lot of cool stuff and travel and have nice things. But it's not like they started out and said, okay, how can I make $1 billion? It doesn't matter what it is. I just need to get $1 billion and then I'll be happy. No, it's like there's an idea, and can I do that? Okay, you've created something from nothing, or you've built a thing that has value and it's created relationships, and part of the reward for that is, oh, money comes with it and allows me to keep building it and do other things. But the money itself, and that's something that I think I've learned on a much smaller scale, a little bit to my surprise. It's like when I make a sale, it's almost never like, yes, I've now made this much more money. It's more like, oh, cool. Now I have a relationship with this company now. We're going to do cool stuff together. And I'm being compensated fairly for it. And that's great. And everybody wins. It's about connection and relationships with other people. And that's how business works. But I didn't really get that until I started this business. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay, I think I kind of get it now. It's not, the money has to be there, but that can't be the first or last thing. That's just
Right.
part of it. Because otherwise, that's not enough to keep you going day after day through the difficult parts of the grind. That alone just isn't going to do it.
Absolutely. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for spending time with me today. It's been a great conversation.
You are welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Didn't I tell you that would be a great conversation? I just love the excitement. I love the excitement about growing and building the business. Like, this is the stuff that small business really generates the energy in the economy, because we love what we do so much. We get excited about all of the things. I just love it. And, I guess I need to say I'm sorry for taking us totally on a tangent about Brendan Fraser and the Mummy, but I don't know, might be a great idea to start that podcast. I don't know if somebody will steal it before I get to it, but if you do, you go for it. I'll be happy to be a part of that. So didn't mean to take us there, but you never know what's going to happen in these conversations. So, again, back to Jeremy and the amazing stuff that he's accomplishing within this really hot industry of podcasting specifically. And I love that we at least got to talk about like the history of how podcasting has evolved from the concept of a radio show way back in the 40s, 30s, 40s. You'd sit around at night, and I love that he pointed out you were under the schedule that they provided, versus podcasting. You can do this at any time. Like, you can jump in to an episode or show. You might be listening to me at midnight. I don't know. You can do this any place, anytime, anywhere. A lot of those barriers, and he mentioned barrier to entry, reduced, like done. Like, anybody can do this. You might want to like take a training or something, or you want to do a little research on like how to put something together, but the tutorials are out there. Anybody can do it if you learn how to do it. You got to be willing to do the work, because it is a little work. It is a little work. This is why consistency over time takes some work. And so I do apologize for not having a couple of those episodes out there, because I was flat on the couch, not feeling good. So with that, though, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I did. And I typically enjoy all my episodes. So hopefully you feel that energy through these shows as well, because I just really enjoy talking to small business owners. I love to see and hear what they've got going on. And through this platform, I can share that with the world. So I hope that you got a lot out of it, just as much as I did. And I hope you will join us on the next episode. I have been your host. And remember, go subscribe. Oh, and leave us a great review. Like if you don't like something, I guess go ahead and put that out there too, because I need to make sure this gets better for you as an experience. But if you like it, let me know. Like I'd love to have those awesome reviews out there so more people actually listen. And don't keep as a secret, share with your friends. It's worth it. It's worth it. You know that chamber that you should be a part of? You should totally share this with your chamber. You should totally tell your people at the chamber you should listen to Small Business Small Talk. And in fact, why don't you try to be a guest? So I'm always looking for new guests for the future episodes. So let me know if you have somebody that you would love to have appear on the show. Please send them my way. Contact me through the website. And with that, I have been your host, Christy Smallwood, with Eagle Eye Strategies here based in Louisville, Kentucky. And join us again on the next episode of Small Business Small Talk.